Well, hello, whoever is listening. I don't think anyone is listening at the moment. I'm just listening to myself talking. This is our first podcast episode, 3,500 miles between us, and I'm by myself. I thought that I would just record anyway. I've been thinking about doing a podcast with my sister, who lives 3,500 miles away, approximately, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I live in British Columbia. And we talk all the time, usually using a walkie-talkie app called Voxer for years. And we've grown closer and closer over the years, and we've been through a lot of different things and helped each other through stuff. I'd like to think I've helped her. She's definitely been a support to me. And I've always said, we should record these conversations. They're really interesting. I think other people might find them interesting. And we don't really know anything about much of anything. But we are definitely interested in a lot of things. And so here we go. And I guess I'll just talk about myself on this first episode because Abigail's not here. She's going through a lot in her life right now, and just doesn't feel like she has the bandwidth to be able to do this. So I'm definitely the pusher of doing this podcast. And I gotta say, it made me feel a little nervous. And I don't know why, because I'm not standing in front of a live audience. There's nothing, you know, there's no big requirement. But I find in my life, I'm a very creative person, that, when you make a plan to do something new, it feels good. But then when the plan has to get wheels and you're kind of like putting pen to paper, or you're actually moving out into these uncharted waters, that's where the nerves and the butterflies come, because now you stand to fail. The idea can be great in your head. And I think a lot of people don't move an idea from their head into, actual walking it out. And I've done that a lot in my life. And I think, if one of my friends was to talk at my funeral, they'd probably say, yeah, Jobie had a lot of ideas and he didn't really plan out the ins and outs of how those were all going to look, but he just went for it. And I've made so many mistakes through my life from not counting the cost completely and just going all in. But from meeting other people throughout my life, I've realized that a lot of people get frozen at the idea and don't walk things through, and just never have any, crazy experiences. And I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and some of them have been really bad. Now, some of them are really good, but I would never have had those had I not just had the balls to just go in. But it still requires a level of guts to move into uncharted waters. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, it still gives you butterflies. And as soon as I said to Abigail, as soon as my sister Abby said, let's go for it, I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's a bad idea. And jumping on the call with her next episode, I'm sure might feel a little, let's walking on in a path here in the middle of the forest. You might hear birds and me saying hi to people. Yeah, it might feel a bit awkward because it's like having a camera rolling or something, just kind of all of a sudden you're not yourself anymore. So hopefully we work through that. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so why do this? Again, should we talk about why, or should we just talk about? Should I just talk about myself, where I've come from? Maybe I should leave that for when we get together. Talk about where we've come from. Why the podcast? I think I'm going to double down on a lot of these things. Like, I guess when, sometimes I listen to podcasters and they'll say the same story over and over and over again to new guests. And as a listener, you'll be like, dude, I've heard this story 50 times. But for them, they're in the moment and they're telling this new guest who hasn't heard their stories these same stories that you hear. So I'm sure it will get like that. I hope I have the staying power to keep going with this. And so part of my reason for doing this podcast was I thought it would be cathartic for Abby and I to set a routine of, instead of just chatting from time to time, it's like every Friday, let's do half an hour, catch up, what's going on. And I think I have a feeling that it's going to feel like a bit of an anchor point in our life, something we actually start to look forward to. That's my gut feeling. And the other thing for me is that I'm a very creative person. If I'm not creating, I'm not happy. Um, and I'm now in my 50s, early 50s, and I'm still struggling with trying to figure out the creative journey or the journey of a human being in a creative mind, how to live and be um, okay with sometimes days when you're not creating. Like right now, I'm waiting for my truck to get fixed, and it's too far for my wife to come pick me up and then come drop me off again. So I'm killing time. But I find myself having to make that time useful, which is talking on this podcast. But I definitely have to, I have an inner struggle at the moment because I'm not creating on my property. Bit of background there. We moved 2 years ago from Vancouver City and moved to the country on Vancouver Island and moved to a 5-acre farm. And for 2 years straight, I've been creating on that farm because it was left in disarray. And it's very physically demanding, but very rewarding for a creative mind because I have this blank canvas where I can do whatever I want on, as long as the money's there to purchase materials. Um, Part of the challenge is I get obsessed in that creative rut, and it's hard to balance that with, raising kids, spending quality time, being at peace. And I find that very often I don't look up and look at the trees around and smell the roses, quote unquote. I'm head down, ass up, obsessing over finishing whatever task I've put in front of me. And really, I know that there's a good side to that where I actually get shit done. And people are always amazed about how quickly I can get things done. But the dark side of it is that inside my body is this obsessive angst that isn't a peaceful place because I've set this crazy goal and I don't really feel a sense of satisfaction until the goal is complete. The in-between part, the journey from getting to from point A to point B is not very fun inside my body. It's like this level of like intense anxiousness uh, that drives me and almost gets me into a bit of a frenzy. And then when someone says, "Hey," like my kid says, "Hey, Dad, can you throw the frisbee?" I like seize up. I'm like, "Oh my God, don't pull me off my task. I've got this. I've got to build this thing and make this thing or whatever it might be." And I know when I picture myself like the Stoics do on my deathbed, how much regret would be there. Like really the important things, and we all know this, are lifting your head, enjoying looking at the trees, blowing in the wind, throwing a frisbee with your son, going fishing in the middle of the day. Like those are the things that you won't ever regret. But you will regret, and I will regret obsessively working over something that I'm making, if it's pulling me away from, sounds like I'm getting really close to a train, if it's pulling me away from time with other human beings or nature. So I guess it's all about balance, and it's a lifelong um, project to find balance in my life. I'm currently now walking through a tiny little trail, and I don't know if I'm going to get lost because I'm thinking about what I'm saying, and I'm not thinking about where I'm walking. So we'll all get lost together. Um, so yeah, so the dance of a creative person, for me, I don't know if I'll ever arrive at the place where I feel like the balance is there. Maybe it'll just be a lifelong project that keeps me in check with the frailty of my existence. Like I said, I think there's a beautiful side to having a creative mind. but everyone's strength is also their weakness. I believe in their strength is their weakness, because usually it's the pendulum has swung too far. I think I'm coming across a homeless embankment in the shelter. Yep, there's a tent in the middle of the forest. Maybe I'll walk there. There's homeless tent right in the middle of the forest. So yeah, so where am I going? That why I created this podcast, or I felt like doing this podcast, was simply to have a place to process. And I think that, or I know that, interacting with other human beings, should someone stumble across this podcast and actually get something out of it, will be super rewarding. Because I believe that art wants and needs to be noticed. Human art, nature's art is different. I think, maybe it's not different, but I am always humbled when I walk in a forest and I see a tree that maybe has never been noticed by human beings. It just sits there, and it's the most incredible creation, and it lives and dies by itself. And it's okay with that, whereas humans need recognition. So there's something in the human condition, I guess, that wants to be seen. Um, I was a musician at one time in my life, and um, for me, the biggest payoff was when someone said, "Oh, your song really helped me through a rough time," or I love that one song," and or when I was playing on stage, just seeing people kind of lose themselves in the music. That to me, and there was this crazy synergy that would happen between the artist on stage and the crowd. It'd be this like thing that happened between us. It was like intimate. And I've looked at pictures of me when I was performing, and just the happiness on my face was, I don't know if I've seen another picture in another place like that, like just unbelievably happy. And I think because those pictures capture me in the moment, like that's probably why artists in their, old age still continue to perform, because they miss that. I don't think it's the drug of fame and having adulation. It's the drug of that like connection with people that's like hard to put words to, but it's magic. And for that 1 hour of performing, you're in the moment. So, so yeah, I think that creating a podcast has the potential of that, where maybe someone gets some enjoyment out of it, and it will then feel good to both parties. And that's my hope. There's a couple people. Morning, morning, industrial area. Um, and yeah, I think that I hope that it would grow to a place where there would be that two-way connection, and it will kill two birds with one stone, because me and my sister will connect as we always do, but it'll also mean that we can somehow feed a creative itch, and I have that itch all the time. Um, and when I decided to kind of go for it and do this, I felt a sense of release, because it was like I have a hard time with creating and not implementing. Like when I was in music, I used to, it was like a job almost, not in a bad way, but in a good way. I was like, get together, write music, and what was the objective? Write a song, write a good song. It wasn't jamming. And then when we kind of hung up our musician spurs, a bunch of bands that used to play together created a jam space that we shared, and we would jam, but we weren't performing live, so there was no agenda to write a song, no need to. And it took me a long, long time to come to terms with, sorry, the loud industrial something or other beside me here. It took me a long time to come to terms with understanding just playing music for the sheer enjoyment of it and letting it just vaporize into the ether, and not putting pen to paper and not completing a song. And I think there's good in both, but I definitely had to learn how to do the latter, how to do the free form jamming community with other musicians, and then just walking away. That for me is difficult to do, because I'm always like, what's the purpose? What's the end goal? Where are we going with this? Um, and I think, I've probably struggled with that in relationships, friendships, just having a whimsical, no agenda friendship is tough for me. It's always like, what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? Where are we going to get to? I remember a friend of mine just the other day was going through the same creative struggle as I was, really just feeling a bit depressed and what's the point? Where are we going? Kind of thing. And came over and we went for a walk down to the beach in the middle of the day, which is very unlike me. Don't you dare tear me away from my job. And at the end of the walk, I was like, "Oh, it's good," and we hugged, and he went off his way and mine. And but I was left feeling a little funny because we hadn't really solved his problem, and he hadn't really solved mine. But now, just talking about this makes me realize that it's not about that. It's just about spending time together. It doesn't have to have some big agenda. My wife and I were both pretty focused on stuff. And last night I was like, okay, we got to go for a date one of these, but it's so busy and we're out in the countryside and we're trying to save money. And so we just went for a walk to the beach and we just talked about nothing particular. It wasn't like this big highlight. Wow, that was an amazing date. It was just like, no, we just hung out together, just the two of us, and talked. Um, and I guess that's part of just maintaining. It's like the oil change in a car. That's the maintenance that a friendship needs. I have a hard time with that. It's always like, what's the purpose? Where are we going? And if you only do things that have an agenda and a purpose, then life becomes pretty two-dimensional, I guess, pretty fast. I don't know if I've been talking for today. 18 minutes. Feels like hours. Um, so that's, yeah. And so I think that this podcast will evolve in the way it wants to evolve. I don't think we have a particular subject that we like to stick to. Um, well, why not talk about me a bit more, where I come from? So I was born in England, in the same family Abigail was born into. Surprise, surprise. We're siblings. Um, I'm going to see if she's going to jump on this call. I'm going to give her a shout, and if not, we'll do. I'll jump back on and start talking. Yeah, it seems like she's not available. Yeah, why don't I just wrap it up there? That's just my take on why a podcast. I just wanted to record something so I feel like a sense of creative release. And I think that we're probably going to be talking about all kinds of things. We talk about, life, faith, meaning of life, a lot of that, parenting, relationships, politics. We don't know about, not very good at politics, but we definitely have an opinion on politics, I guess. Health, and morning, and everything in between. So um, I'm hoping we don't freeze up when we talk and it doesn't go anywhere. I think we just relax and have fun with it. Um, and yeah, I'll leave it there. Catch you next time. If there's a you out there, catch you next time. Did you consider 35?